Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 8 of In the 11. Now, when I do these podcasts, I understand how there could be some trepidation, I guess you could say, or kind of wariness amongst you as the listener in asking yourself, well, kind of how am I qualified, or how am I in a position where I should be able to give you advice, or why you should really listen to me? And I can certainly understand that feeling, right? I haven't necessarily played at the highest of highest levels yet, and although I hope to one day, I haven't gotten there yet to really kind of show you the blueprint of how necessarily to do that. But I think part of what I'm hoping to provide in value in terms of this podcast is showing you that process of trying to get to the level that I hope to get to one day, and showing you the journey of me trying to become the best footballer that I can be, and trying to give you some of the insights or advice or just really things that I've learned kind of along the way. So I think on the flip side of that, I'll say the topic for today's podcast is certainly something that I have a plethora of experience in and expertise from, as I said, a number of experiences in this particular kind of world of failing or being rejected or things like that. So I hope that the advice that I can bring you today and some of the points that I talk about today is something that can really help you. And without further ado, let's get it rolling. First and foremost, when we talk about experiencing failure or experiencing rejection, specifically in the world of football, although a lot of these principles today can be applied to other walks of professional life or personal life or whatever the case is, we have to understand, especially as footballers, that every player of all levels either has already experienced failure, rejection, and or will experience it at some point throughout their career. It is just sort of, it comes with the territory, it comes with you trying to push yourself to be the best player that you can be. If you really pursue this game at a competitive level and you want to go on to play club soccer, play high school soccer, play college soccer, play beyond that, then it is just an inevitable truth that you're going to have to face this at some point. If you are simply a recreational player, pickup player, does it for fun, this probably might not apply to you. But if you really go for this in a serious way, then it is something that you're going to have to deal with, and that's just kind of a reality that we have to face as soccer players. So I believe that how you cope with that failure or rejection, how you deal with it, how you respond, is directly going to correlate to how successful you can truly be in this game and how far you can let the game really take you. And what I mean by that is, myself and I'm sure a lot of other players out there, a lot of you as well, we've all known those players who, when they experience the hardship, when they experience a failure, a setback, they pack up their things and it's done for them and they fold, right? You're playing with a guy on your team, thinks he's good enough to be in the starting 11, consistently isn't getting picked to be in the starting 11, and then just is making excuses, blaming the coach, saying he doesn't see it, and then winds up not playing anymore, or winds up quitting the game, or just a number of different situations like that, right? You get cut from a team and that's the end of the soccer journey for you. Just because you weren't picked for this one specific team, that suddenly ended your career in the sport or your love for the sport. And that's probably has partially something to do with it, is that maybe the person didn't really love the game enough to experience that failure or that rejection and pick themselves back up and keep going. I'm sure that plays a major component in it, because I know for me, that was the one thing that I've kind of spoken to this effect in the past, is I almost felt as if I didn't have a choice necessarily in whether or not I could actually stop playing. I Even when I experienced failure and rejection countless times, when to the normal person that might have been enough to just be like, I don't think that it is my destiny to play this game. I think that maybe this is a bigger sign. I felt as if I almost didn't have a choice in the matter, and it was just my body, my mind, my spirit, I don't know what you want to call it, just wouldn't allow me to quit. And it was probably because of how much I love the game and how much I just didn't want it to be removed from my life, and I just wouldn't quit until I could continue to have it be a focal point of my life. So to kind of bring into perspective why I said I feel like I have a plethora of experience in laying out for you sort of how I've dealt with failure and rejection, and how I can try and give you some advice onto why you should do things a certain way when you experience failure or rejection, or really how to cope with it. I can kind of talk to some of the experiences that I've had in which I've dealt with things, and hopefully it can provide you some information at least, or see a way that a player dealt with it, right? So I would say probably the first time I experienced it in a major way, at the time it was major, but looking back, it's probably not now. When I was a sophomore in high school, tried out for the varsity team. I'd been playing soccer since I was very young. I think I started when I was like 6, and then as I got into middle school, 7th, 8th grade, when I was about, 13, 14, then you get the opportunity to start playing for your school teams. So I started doing that, and then as you get into high school, the way it works, for those of us who are Americans, for those of us who aren't, maybe don't know, it is what's called a varsity team, a junior varsity team, and then some schools, if they have enough resources, if they have enough players, they'll also have a freshman team. So the freshman team naturally is mostly comprised of freshmen in high school, 9th graders, and occasionally a couple of better 8th or 7th grade players. Junior varsity is very typically sophomores, predominantly sophomores, and then maybe a couple of freshmen, maybe a junior who just really isn't quite the best player, but still wants to be a part of the team and wants to play. And then lastly, varsity is just the best players in high school. So it's mostly made up of seniors, but there's also usually a number of juniors, and then if you're a sophomore and you're better than a junior, then you're on varsity. If same goes if you're a freshman and you're better than older kids, then you're on varsity. So I was on junior varsity my freshman year, and then sophomore year went into the tryouts and felt as if I had a decent chance to maybe get picked for the varsity team. Wasn't really planning on having a lot of playing experience in the varsity team, but thought that I could make the team. Went in and was told, no, you're not good enough for this team, or big enough. I can't even remember what was told to me at that time. And it was difficult mostly because there were other players at my age. There were, I think, like 5 sophomores who got picked to play for varsity, and most of them were pretty good friends of mine, and so that was tough to see guys that you've played with, guys that are your very good friends, they're on varsity and you're on junior varsity. So that was one of the first times, I think, in a very real, substantial way where I had to deal with that rejection. And to some people, it could have been a moment where they can complain and get down on themselves and maybe not pick themselves up and try and continue to get better, and then make the varsity team next year and do well. And I think what I want to kind of demonstrate in this podcast is how I really had to, as I got older, work on my ability to cope and deal with rejection and with failure. I wouldn't say that, me as a 15-year-old sophomore in high school, that I handled everything exactly how I would handle it now. I didn't always have a mindset that was positive and that was really a growth mindset, is what I guess the term you could use is. A lot of times when I would be faced with failure, and I just didn't know how to deal with it, and I let it affect me negatively for quite a while, and then eventually I would be able to get over things, but I didn't deal with it the best way that I really should have. And I know in this instance, for example, I probably dwelled on it for far too long, and maybe it affected my play during that year. I don't really know. As I got later into the season, I know I did pretty well in the JV team. I played a number of games and thought I did well. And then as I continued to develop, especially in the off season as well, playing club soccer, by the time I did make varsity as a junior, and it was a different coach now, I did pretty well that season, and I got a couple of games where I started and I played most games. And then by the time I was a senior, I had a really great senior year season and was the leading goal scorer for our team. Granted, it was only 5 goals, but hey, still counts. And that was something that, as a sophomore, I think it could have had the potential to sort of derail my career a little bit, and I could have gotten really frustrated and down on myself as a player, and not have the bounce back necessary to then go on and play for the varsity team like I wanted to, and really do well at the varsity level, which was ultimately the main goal of it all. So as we move on here, a lot of this you guys have already heard from me because I've talked to you about the college experience for me, right? When I graduated high school and I went to Endicott and I got cut from the team. And while I gave you guys sort of the broad strokes of what happened to me throughout college, I just kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into specifically what the emotions were like, or what I was feeling, and how I tried to recover from being cut from Endicott, being told I couldn't play at Cortland, those types of things. So Endicott was, as I mentioned, a really difficult year for me because I went into the preseason thinking I was going to be a collegiate soccer player at the Division III level. And I had chosen this school because it was going to allow me the opportunity to get a quality education. But really a big thing was for me to play soccer as well. And when I was cut from this team, it was so devastating to me because I didn't know, as I said, I didn't know really how to be anything but a soccer player. You know what I mean? I had been a soccer player since I was 6 years old, and I had played it all my life, and it just was it was sort of a fabric of my being. It was part of who I was, and I loved the game so much, and it was soul crushing to me to have it ripped away from me like that. But this was college. This was different. I didn't have really a concept of what I could do to change my situation. I just sort of, in the beginning, accepted it. And as I said earlier, I didn't have the right mindset, probably, in dealing with this particular failure, this particular rejection. I was cut from the team. I wallowed in my sorrows for a while, and then just sort of accepted the fact that, okay, I'm not going to be a college soccer player. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be a regular student, and I am going to, graduate, get a good job, do the American dream, I guess you could say. Do what the blueprint is for 80-90% of students and kids my age. Go to college, get the good job, and live the humdrum life. And I went about that year, that academic year, and especially that first semester, I just tried to immerse myself in being a college student, and I tried to live what I thought was supposed to be the college life. I didn't train a lot, didn't eat the best. You know, like I've mentioned in the past, I probably worked out 3 times a week at most. Wasn't really seeing a lot of results, and I think about that a lot to this day. You know, what if I had had a mindset like I have now, where as soon as that happened, I just trained and trained and trained and tried to get ready for something new. Because really that year of me being a freshman in college when I was 18 years old, that's probably a big kind of gap in my development. And an 18-year-old player, that's a huge year for them to continue to develop as a player. Really any year before, you know, you get into your late 20s, I would say, is a year where you can continue to see drastic improvements in your development with the right amount of work put into it. So for me, as an 18-year-old, to kind of take my foot off the gas, so to speak, and put my training and my development on pause, I always wonder, you know, what kind of player could I be now, or would I be that much farther ahead, all those types of things. But having that year at Endicott where I really, for the majority of it, kind of just wallowed in the failure and wallowed in the rejection, it pushed me to a place at the end of the year where I just couldn't accept it for what it was anymore. I wasn't going to just allow myself to have my story written for me like that. You know, I started to believe that I have the power and I have the ability to, as cliche as it sounds, make this story written how I want it to be, and no one else should have control over that. And so, as I mentioned to you guys in my college story, I wound up leaving Endicott, and I went on to go to community college, and I was able to play soccer there, and I was kind of able to reignite the flame. And while it was much longer than it really should have been, I was able to bounce back from this failure and turn it into a positive thing. So I had my good experience at Tompkins Cortland Community College, where I played soccer there. And then, as I mentioned in the past, I went on to try and play at a NCAA institution where I could receive my bachelor's degree, finish out my college soccer career, play there for 2 years. So when I wound up making the decision to go to Cortland, it was with the intent that as I graduated in the fall from my community college, getting my associate's degree, in the spring, I would be able to join the team in the spring and train with them and play some of their preseason match, or their exhibition matches, and I thought this would give me a great opportunity to prove myself in a very different and what I anticipated would be an easier way for me to show myself and who I was as a player, rather than coming into a preseason with, you know, very similar to an Endicott situation where I didn't know how this coach ran things. So it could be he brings in 45 guys into a preseason in the fall and then looks to cut it down to a roster of 25 or something like that. So I felt as if me having the opportunity to train with him for the entirety of the spring season would allow me to grow accustomed to the level, grow accustomed to the team, grow accustomed to the coaching staff, and hopefully put myself in a position where I already was more or less part of the team going into that fall preseason, that fall season, because I had this body of work in the spring with which the coaching staff could go off of, and which the players were already accustomed with me. And as I went into the season, I would feel more comfortable in the team and my ability and where I stood. As I mentioned, that didn't wind up working out because I can't remember at this point. he emailed me one day and said he spoke to the athletic director and that wasn't able to work. So then, why don't we push this to the fall? You can come and train in the fall in the preseason, and then we can look at you for the team then. And so at first I was, a little bit frustrated by that, but I thought, okay, well, I still have the opportunity to come in the fall. I should be able to make that work, no problem. So then, as I mentioned in previous episodes, I had the opportunity where the club that I was playing with, GBFC, which was an NPSL club, had a scrimmage or just a friendly match against Cortland. So I played for GBFC. I played about 20 minutes. I think I played left back. Felt like I did all right, but was told after the game, no, we're not interested in you as a player. And what was difficult again about this situation was there were a couple of other players in that GBFC team with me that day who were also looking to go to Cortland, and were kind of using that in a similar way to myself, to have the coach for Cortland take a look at them and assess and evaluate them. And so after the game, he brought, I think, 2 or 3 players over, and they had a conversation, one of which was one of my great friends at Tompkins Cortland. We played with each other, and I lived with him in my house and all that type of stuff. And he had told all of them, yeah, I like you guys as players. I want to bring you in for the fall, all that type of thing. I wasn't in that conversation with those 3. And so then I go to the coach after and have the conversation, Coach, what did you think? And I'm told, no, don't think you're quite what we're looking for, not ready physically, all that type of stuff. And then am told, if you want to come for a walk-on tryout, it's 1 day after 2 weeks of preseason, then you can come and you can do that. And so I was kind of in a pickle again, and once again, will I say I handled it the best, handled the failure, the rejection the best? No, but what I will say is my turnaround time in which I was able to bounce back was much faster, and I'm much more proud of myself for this than I was in terms of dealing with the Endicott failure, where it took me really a year to kind of pick myself back up and fully go for it again. I had, a couple days where I was really down on myself, and again, I thought I was done with soccer, and I thought, again, that my story was going to be written for me and that I didn't have a choice in how the pages turned out. I remember saying to my family, okay, well, I guess that's it for me for soccer. I guess I'll just, once again, I'll be a student. I'll get the internships. I'll get the jobs. I'll do what everybody's supposed to do. And I remember I spoke to some of my teammates at Tompkins Cortland, and I spoke to some of my friends, and it was hard, certainly, because, as I mentioned, my very good friend who was in the house with me, he was going to be a part of the team for Cortland, so it was a difficult thing for him and I to kind of speak to it, because which made, honestly, the rejection and the failure a lot more difficult, to see one of your friends have that success and get picked for the team, and obviously you're thrilled for them, you're happy for them, but at the same time you're almost jealous in a sense, or upset because you feel as if you want that same thing or you deserve that same thing and you haven't gotten it. So it's hard to kind of toe that line between still being supportive and happy for a person who is going after the same thing that you are, but they got it and you didn't, if that makes sense. So, as I said, I was speaking to family, speaking to friends, and then, as you guys know, my college story, I eventually kind of dipped my toe back into the recruiting pool and emailed some more coaches and had a couple conversations with a friend or two who said, oh yeah, I'm going to maybe go check out this school. And one thing led to another, and I eventually wound up finding Chestnut Hill, which was a great home, great landing spot for me. And while I, maybe could have had that 5% chance or less that I went to Cortland and tried out at that walk-on tryout and made the team, I said, you know what, let me go to a place where I'm going to be valued and I know I'm going to be part of the team. And it was a Division II program versus a Division III program, which I know it does not necessarily mean that one program is better than the other. There's a number of Division III programs that I know of in the country that could beat Division II schools, could even beat Division I schools, and I've seen it happen before. And soccer is very much a sport in which the divisions aren't quite so rigid and don't mean, I don't want to say as much, but they don't mean exactly what they mean in terms of a football or basketball sport, right? If you take a high-level Division I football school and have them play a Division III school, it's just not going to be a competition. And the soccer is one sport where, kind of because of the nature of the game, because it's a low-scoring game and it's a game where it can be played with different tactics, and every team can have a different way and philosophy of approaching the game. We see it all the time at higher levels in terms of the professional game, right? In things of the FA Cup or the Copa del Rey or any type of cup structure in which a smaller, third, fourth division club can come up and knock out a giant in the first division. Soccer has that ability to lend itself towards the upset, and that's why the division model in soccer doesn't always dictate exactly who is the best team with the better players and the better coach. But with that being said, I was excited to be a part of a Division II program, and part of my ego and part of my cockiness probably thought, oh well, that was a Division III program, and now I'm actually going to play a Division II program, and that whole type of thing probably fed into my ego a little bit, and I'm happy that I made that decision, and it turned out to be a great decision for me, and who would have knows what would have happened if I had stayed at Cortland and tried out for that walk-on tryout. My guess is I wouldn't have made the team. If I had to tell you right now, I would not have made the team, and then I don't know what I would have done. Probably would have had a degree from Cortland and would be doing something different right now. That just kind of goes to show you how even in college, how I started to experience some of that failure and some of that rejection, and that's really even before I ventured out and stepped out into the semi-professional and professional game, which as you get higher up in the ladder, higher up in the pyramid, it only gets more cutthroat, it only gets more competitive, and you'll only really experience more failure and more rejection. So in a way, I'm sort of grateful that I had those experiences growing up in college, because as I then ventured out into the semi-professional and professional game, I already had experience directly dealing with failure and dealing with rejection and being cut from teams, that when I had to face it head on entering into the world of combines and open tryouts and all those types of things and trials, it wasn't a completely foreign concept to me, and I had some experience with, okay, here's what I need to do, here's what I need to listen to when the coach is saying, here's what I need to ignore, and here's how I'm going to pick myself up and move on from this particular experience. So there were a number of NPSL teams and PDL, which is now known as USL League 2, that I tried out for, some of which were during college and some of which were at post-college as well. But I never actually got the chance to play in either of those leagues. Even when I was playing for GVFC, I didn't think I was one of the best players in the group, but because of the way that team was set up, and because oftentimes they wouldn't have enough players for games and they were low on numbers at training, and I was consistent at every single training, always showed up, and then they would show up to games with like 12 or 13 guys. And there were even times when I would show up because my roommate was the goalkeeper for the team, where I would show up to watch him, and they would have like one sub. Meanwhile, I'm on the sidelines, and I'm like, okay, I could have at least been in the team. You know what I mean? I could have sat on the bench for you guys if you needed a sub, and it was just interesting coaching decisions. But that was an experience that was, I wouldn't say demoralizing, but was frustrating, and kind of was a failure in a sense that I couldn't get picked to play in these matches. And same thing when I tried out for the PDL teams that I would try out for, the NPSL teams. I wasn't ever picked to play at that level, and that can be a hard thing to experience too, especially because oftentimes, just in human nature, but it happens a lot in soccer, is that we look around us and see what other players are doing. And for example, in a team like that, you look at players and you're like, well, I feel like I'm just as good as that player. Why is he getting picked and not me? Or I play at a higher level than this player. Why is he getting picked and not me? And all those types of things. And it really can play a difficult role kind of on your mental fortitude in playing that game with yourself and comparing yourself to other players and analyzing yourself with other players. And it's why I say I got better at it as I got older, but I wasn't always good at it. And eventually you have to try and get yourself to a point where you don't do all that overanalyzation and comparing yourself to the players who made a team that you didn't make. You almost have to, I would say, just kind of maybe come up with a reason, or don't come up with a reason at all in your head. They got picked because of this. All right, is what it is. It really just becomes an acceptance of what is, rather than trying to look deeper into it and just getting yourself more worked up, more frustrated about why they made it and you didn't. And I'm going to talk to that a little bit later as we kind of continue to move on into here, and how I think it can be helpful for you guys to maybe sort of reconfigure your relationship with that rejection or with that fear. But I also started to, after college, I started to go to combines, which are really difficult event to go to, because a combine is by nature highly selective, and meaning that there's going to be a high rate of players who experience failure or rejection from this combine, if you look at it like that, because there's only going to be so many scouts there, and there hasn't been an open combine in the history of the world where every single player was selected or offered a trial or offered a contract. So there's going to be numerous players who feel maybe hard done by, or that they weren't good enough, or that they didn't succeed in coming to this combine and achieving the goal that they wanted to achieve. Because I also sort of learned throughout my process in going to combines and going to open trials like this that I think I'm a player that I don't exactly thrive or flourish in that type of situation, in a one, or 2-3 day combine, where it's almost like you're looking for that flash in the pan type player, where you want to look at a player that's going to provide you little glimpses and those little flashes, and then you see something, you see a spark in that player, and you want to bring them into your team to have a closer look at them and see if that's sustainable, if they can really hang at the level, if they can do things well consistently. I feel as if I'm more of a player who, as I enter into a team, maybe it's within a preseason or within the length of a season, I can consistently show you. My college coach always used to tell me, Coach Zach, he used to tell me that every time I put you on the field, I know I'm going to get a 7 or 8 out of 10 every time. You're consistent. I know exactly what I'm going to get from you, and I don't necessarily have to worry once I put you in the field. And while in one sense you can look at that as a positive attribute, because it means I'm consistent, it means I do the little things right, and it means I can be an integral part of your team, it also means that rarely are you going to get that 10 out of 10 game for me, where I am, if I'm playing fullback, I'm bombing up and down, I'm taking players on 1v1, I'm making sliding tackles, I'm doing all the flashy, elaborate things that catch a coach's eye, and as I said, have that flash in the pan to then let me take a look closer at that and bring that in for a trial if this is making sense. I feel as if as I become a member of a team, and I've spoken to other people about this, and I think they've kind of agreed with my sentiment. I was actually speaking to the director of one of the combines that I went to recently, and he had taken a look at my video, and we were just kind of talking, and I was talking about this exact idea that I think in a combine setting or an open tryout where I have a limited amount of time to try and dazzle and show off, I don't think that that's the best stage for me. I think if you put me in a season, you'll see why I can add value to a club or add value to a team, and he kind of agreed with me and said the same thing. He said, I think you're the type of player who, when you find a club that is looking for exactly what you can do, which in a way is a bit of a niche thing that I can do, that you'll stay at that club forever because you'll provide them with, that 7 out of 10 consistently. I'm not always going to be that type of player that's going to come in and provide you with that flair and provide you with that over-the-top excitement. And I look at that as a positive for myself as well, in that I'm bringing you a 7 out of 10 consistently as a player. And while, as I said, that may lead to maybe there's not those 10 out of 10 games, at the same time, it also means there's not those 2 out of 10 games. There's not those, 1 out of 10 games where I absolutely have just had a nightmare out there. I'm consistently at a decent, good level, and once I find where that level fits into the professional football pyramid, the ladder, whatever you want to call it, I think that's something where I can excel and kind of find my groove, find my niche. And then as I can hopefully continue to develop as a player, then maybe I can take that structure or that level that I've achieved and done well consistently at that level, and then try and, okay, can I raise my game a little bit more? Then can I go to the next level and adapt and adjust, and then get myself to a 7 out of 10 each and every game. So that's really what I'm looking for when I'm going to a combine or I'm going to these tryouts, and why I felt as if in Germany I had a lot more success with my trials there, because one, I felt as if the German culture, the German soccer system, the German philosophy of playing the game, it lent itself more to a player like myself. Oftentimes I think the American game is based very much on athleticism and speed and power and strength, and if you don't have those things, then you need to be technically just incredibly flary and creative and be able to make not only an impact on the game, but make a flashy impact on the game, I feel as if sometimes. And the German way is often very different to that. You look at some of the players who have had a lot of success in the German national team. You look at a Philipp Lahm, you look at Joshua Kimmich right now, you look at a Schweinsteiger, a Kroos, the list can go on, but a lot of them are players who they do the simple things right consistently for 90 minutes over tens and hundreds of games. They give you consistent performances always. Philipp Lahm isn't the type of player who's going to play like a Dani Alves and get up and down the wings and combine intricately and take players on 1v1 and do all those types of things. But you know when you put him out there, you don't have to, or when you put him out there, obviously he's retired now, you don't have to worry about him, and you know he's not a liability. So as I was going into Germany and being a part of that culture, I felt like, wow, this is a place where I can do all those things that I've said I wanted to do. You know, I can play at a level where I think what I do will be appreciated, and I started to experience that more from some of the coaches that I was going and trialing with, and they were appreciating what I could do and what I could bring to the team. And it wasn't those conversations where I'm going afterwards to the coach and they're saying, well, I mean, you're only 5'9" and you're not very big, you're not very strong, you're not very fast. Because that was what I was experiencing a lot in America. And they understood from a tactical and a technical perspective what I could add to the game, and they appreciated that. Now, with that being said, as I've said on podcasts in the past, just because a coach likes what you can do and thinks you can add value to their team at the professional level, that is, while great, it is not always going to then lead to you getting a contract with the team or you getting to play with that team. There, especially as a foreigner, as I've said, there's a number of other factors that come into play, and there's a number of other things that need to align in order for you to actually come into a team. So as I was going on these trials and experiencing sort of mitigated success in that the coach would say, yeah, I think you're a good player, I like what you do, I would then, in a sense, feel the rejection of having those more logistical conversations about, okay, what do you need to join the team? Oh, you need apartment. Oh, you need you need housing. You need job. Those types of things. Well, we can't really swing that. We can't afford for our club to be able to do that for you as a player. So, in a way, that's kind of a rejection, although not as harsh. It's still a rejection nonetheless. And at the same time, you never know. A coach could just be telling you what you want to hear in terms of you as a player, and then use that as an out to say, actually, well, we can't give you housing, we can't give you those types of things, so that's why we're not going to bring you on. You know, they could just be not as bold and not as harsh as other coaches have been, and use that as their out, so to speak, for the reasoning of not bringing you on. So those were kind of rejections, I guess you could say, as well. I wasn't going to be able to sign or play for those teams, so it was not always the best feeling, and it oftentimes led to frustration and more doubt of like, well, will I find a team that is going to be able to do all these things, and what if I find a team that's financially capable of doing that, but they don't like me as a player, they don't appreciate what I can do as a player, or I'm not good enough for that level. So really, as I got into Germany and I had these trials back to back to back and was faced with this rejection on a consistent basis, was where I kind of started to hone my relationship with the failure and with the rejection. And I really started to change my mindset, and which is why I wanted to talk to you guys about how I hope this can maybe something that you can take away and try and implement this in your own soccer careers. So I think when it comes to, you've tried out for a team and now you're having that conversation with a coach and he has said to you, no, not going to pick you for this team, don't think you're good enough for this team, don't think you're good enough for this level. I think you have to, and I hesitate to say ignore the coach altogether, because I don't think that that's what you should do as well. But I think you need to have very selective hearing in what you actually listen and take on board from what that coach is telling you. If he's giving you actual points and concrete things in him saying, hey, this is what I think you're lacking from your game, this is what I think you're missing from your game, that can't hurt you in the sense that you can always try and work on those things and add those and create and make them better in the arsenal of your game, right? For example, I go on a trial in Germany and the coach says to me, we don't think that you're good enough for this team. Your speed of play isn't quite quick enough for this level. We've played you in the center midfield and you're struggling to consistently turn forward and play positive passes. Most of what you're doing is playing negative or playing neutral. And we're really looking for a midfielder who is going to be a more positive and dynamic player. We don't focus quite as much on possession in our team, and we really try and go forward with pace. So in that conversation right there, you take that and you say, okay, well, let me work on my speed of play. Can I get myself into rondos? Can I get myself into trainings with higher level players? And can I try and get better at my speed of play? Can I play quicker? And can I also work on my turning and playing forward and doing those things? Now, the part of him saying, well, you're not good enough for this level, and I don't think you're going to play at this level, and that type of rejection or that really firm no, I think that's the part that you should just completely tune out. And that's the part that you have to, once you walk out of that door from that office or you leave that field or whatever the case is, you finish reading that email, call, whatever, that's the part that you check at the door and it's out of mind, out of sight for the future. Because if you let other people, if you let coaches and sporting directors or whoever be the ones to tell you what your level is and tell you who you are as a player, then there's no point in you continuing to go on as yourself, as a player, and you controlling your own destiny and you controlling your own fate. Because, right, if I listened to every coach that has told me that, I wouldn't be a college soccer player. I wouldn't be a semi-professional soccer player. I wouldn't be, hopefully, on my way to one day being a professional soccer player. So that's why I say that part of it, you have to just check that at the door, and you have to leave that part and take on the things that you can work on, because you can always get better, you can always improve, you can always learn from everyone that you come in contact with in the game of soccer. But understand the things that you need to listen to and understand the things that you just need to let go in one ear and go out the other. So in addition to that, I want to talk about what I think a good mindset is, or what I try and implement in going into a trial, and what I try and think and where I try and keep my head at when I'm trialing with a new club. And I haven't quite exactly figured out how exactly to eloquently kind of wrap this up into one thesis, but I want to do my best to try and just give you guys the information on what I'm thinking when I go trial with a team. So a small part of me is almost anticipating that I'm going to fail. And I know that sounds crazy. And a small part of me is thinking that I probably won't make this team or I probably won't get selected for this team. And it's not that I go into a trial with the ideology that I'm not good enough or that I can't play here. I go in and give it my all and try and do everything in my power to play for this team and impress the coach and impress the players. But I almost go in with the mindset of understanding this, and there's probably going to be hundreds of trials that I go on that don't wind up in success. And me right now, knowing whatever my next opportunity is, when I go over and I start playing with the team, I'm probably going to go on a number of trials in addition to the team that I'm playing with. And I know there's going to be tens and hundreds of more trials that I go on with teams where I won't end up signing for that team. So I almost have to be sort of aware of that fact that there's going to be a lot more failures than there are going to be successes, right? For every one team that you sign for, there's probably 1,000 emails that you send, 100 coaches that you talk to on the phone, and 100 trials that you go to where you don't get selected or you don't get picked for the team for whatever reason. And so I almost go into it thinking, well, there's the 97% chance that this isn't going to be the team I play for. Is the 3% chance or whatever that this is the team that I play for. And I know that sounds a little bit maybe counterintuitive, but what I think it does for me is and this may not work for everyone, so if this is something that you don't think that it is right for you, then by all means do what works best for you when you go into a trial or when you go into a new team or when you go into whatever. I think it kind of gave me the freedom to just go and play and not think, oh my God, I'm on trial, I need to do these things, I need to do those things. There's always a level of urgency and wanting to play at your very best, especially when you're on a trial. But going into it knowing that mindset of like, yeah, there's a good chance that this won't work. And it's to no fault of my own, right? I went on trials in Germany all over and I was told, yep, you're good enough, but we just can't pick you up as a player. So having heard that so many times, I kind of went into it going, yeah, I mean, I know I'm good enough for this level. I've played at this level, trialed here, but I know there's a very good chance that they're not going to be able to support me or really have the ability to sign me. So let's go out, let's take the pressure off, let's just go and do my absolute best. And if it turns out, yep, hey, we actually have an apartment for you that you can stay in and we have a job, we have this and that, then fantastic. But I almost kind of go into it with my 10,000 hours type mindset of, I know I'm going to have to pay my dues and I know I'm going to have to experience failure after failure after failure and experience failed trial after rejected trial over and over until I find that place that's going to be the one. That's going to be the right fit for me and the right fit for the club. Because I talk about this in previous episodes and I'll continue to harp on it until the end of time. Soccer is about finding the one team, the one coach, and the one club that wants to take a chance on you and wants to be able to do everything that they can to have you be a part of their club. And that means, can they pay you what they need to pay you? Can they appreciate what you do as a player? Can you be a valued member of the team? All those types of things. And this goes the same for if you're looking for a college team as well to play for. Can you find the one coach, the one college, the one team that is the perfect fit for the both of you? And so, as I said, I would go into it kind of thinking, well, there's a very good chance that this isn't going to be where the stars align and the exact right fit for everybody. But if it is, fantastic. So let's go into it without pressure, without fear, without anxiety of, oh my God, this is the trial where I need to make it. Because when you do that, you put this burden upon yourself of every single trial that you go into. You're like, this is the one. This is the end all be all. And if you have the ability to deal with failure and deal with rejection and just continue to push and overcome adversity, it won't be the end all be all trial. Because there's so many players who've played at the highest level who have also experienced failure and also experienced rejection. There's no player that I know of that I could think of that every single coach that they've been in front of has loved that player or has always been selected for every single team that they've tried out for. Or even if they've been a part of the team, there's no player who every single coach has picked them every single time to be in the starting 11 or to play the full 90 minutes or whatever the case is. I just read an article about Bernardo Silva, plays for Man City right now, who was 17, 18, 19 years old and wasn't even getting games for his academy team in Portugal. Wasn't even playing for the under-19s. And now, fast forward a few years later, is an integral player for one of the best clubs in the world, playing some of the best football in the world. And so I think that just it illustrates what I'm trying to say here is that you go into every trial and you go into every team and every match, every training with the intent to do your absolute best. And you take on board what coaches are telling you and you try and improve yourself as a player. But at the same time, there has to be a level of thick skin and short memory as an athlete, because there's going to be coaches out there that are going to tell you really just awful things too. Like, no, you're not good enough. No, you'll never make it. No, 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 no. Because somehow a lot of them think that they're doing you a favor by telling you that, which they aren't. And really it just becomes whether or not you're going to accept that for truth, whether or not you're going to allow someone else to tell you who you are or what your story is or who you are as a player, or if you're going to take full control and full ownership of that and write your own story and figure out who you are as a player on your own. So when I go into these trials and I have coaches saying no, or I have coaches saying, yes, you're good enough, but no, we can't make it work, I got to the point where I was doing it so often, I got enough reps in that I was like, okay, that's just not the one. Haven't found the one yet. Still looking for the one. And while I can't say that it feels good every time, I'm not going to say every time a coach tells you no, you're not good enough, that's a fun feeling, because truly it's not. And I don't want to belittle anyone's experience or downplay it that I'm just Mr. Cool, Calm, and Collected, and I'm going in left and right and being told no, and that I'm just cool with it. No, that's not the case. It does sting a little bit. But as I said, when you get enough repetitions of it, you have to change the way you think about it, or else it will just consume you and it will take you down. So I really had to do that, and I had to just, as I said, go into trials. Okay, I'm being told no. Oh, all right, well, this wasn't the one. And we keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going until we eventually find the one where the stars align, the moon is on the right axis, and we found the perfect club for myself, and the club has found the perfect player that they're looking for. And part of why failure and rejection is such an integral part of every player's development and journey as a footballer is not only does it really form who you are as a player and as a person, and it creates a level of fortitude and strength and ability to overcome adversity that helps you in your ability to become a better player and a better person. those things are completely invaluable and important. Also, in experiencing that failure and experiencing that rejection is how you actually find where your success is going to lie. And what I mean by that is, if I am always in teams or in leagues at levels where I am experiencing success or I'm doing well, or even if it's I'm doing extraordinarily well, or if I'm just consistently putting in my 7 out of 10 performances week in and week out. If I only ever stay within the parameters of this is a level where I can dominate, or this is a level where I can consistently perform at a high level, then I'll never actually know what my truest high level is. So, for myself, let's say I was in that team in Germany in the 6th division, and I'm doing well, and I'm doing well, and I'm doing well week after week. But then the following year, the following season, I only play 6th division again. And then I only play 6th division again because, I'm doing well here. I can't figure out exactly where my level is until I go and put myself in a level where I completely fail. Where I wouldn't say that I'm excited for the day, but in a way, I look forward to the day where maybe I get into a session or I go on a trial and I look around, I'm like, oh, they're playing a different game than I am. They're playing chess and I'm playing checkers. Like, this is a different level, because that will then show me and teach me, okay, you're not at that level yet, or you're not at that level at all. Here's where you actually fit, just below that. So, for example, if I go to, let's say, like a country like Denmark or Finland or something like that, and I'm playing in the 3rd division or the 4th division, and I somehow manage to get a trial in the 1st division, and I go in and I trial for a week, and they just absolutely run me off the park, and I look like a deer in headlights, and every time I touch the ball I lose it, and I just don't fit. Okay, well, now I know that I'm not a Division 1 player or first tier player in this specific country, in this league. I'm not ready for that league yet. But maybe what it means is I actually am a 2nd division player. And that's where my true level is, where I can maybe have success, but also still be pushing and challenging myself week in and week out. So going out and seeking that failure and seeking that rejection is actually how you grow, and actually how you truly find where your successful sweet spot is. Because if you only play in those leagues and in those levels where you're consistently, you're the baller and everybody looks at you like, whoa, that's all fine and good. But then when you go and you find the next level, then you're not really ready for it, because you've just gone out and you've sought out the comfortable all the time. When you seek the uncomfortable consistently, when you push yourself outside of the parameters of your comfort zone, that's how you actually find where your real true comfort zone is, and it's how you expand your comfort zone. It's something that I always used to talk about with some of my friends in Germany. In putting myself out there like that, in going to another country, living on my own, and trying to learn a new language and trialing with all these new teams, I tried to consistently put myself outside of my comfort zone and make it difficult on myself. And was it fun all the time? Hell no. But what it did was it expanded the situations and the circumstances in which I did feel comfortable. What I mean by that is things that maybe in the past prior to Germany used to give me anxiety or used to make me nervous, maybe social situations, soccer situations, whatever the case is, those situations that used to give me that anxiety started to not anymore because I would look at some of the experiences I had in Germany and be like, what? I mean, you traveled across a country with a language you've never spoken and traveled with this team. How does this instance make you nervous now when you've experienced that? It's kind of the same concept when it comes to football, right? When I talk about that experience of what if I one day get the chance to travel with a first division club? Well, when I go and I trial at that level and maybe I fall on my ass and I'm not good enough for that level, well then when I take a step down and I find a level that's maybe better suited for me or where I can have more success, I can't look at that and be fearful and be afraid because I've already pushed myself outside my comfort zone. I've already found that level where it is too much for me and it is a place where I'm going to get found out and I'm going to get caught out. So really what the point I'm trying to make with that is don't let fear and don't let rejection be a factor in deterring you from doing something, because it is just a necessary and really important part of you continuing to grow as a footballer and a person, and as I said, finding exactly where you fit in the football world. So I hope that some of what I've talked about today has been able to give you guys some value, and I hope that maybe you can take some of what I've said and try to apply to your thinking and your mindset of how to approach a failure or something you perceive to be a failure, a rejection, or a difficult adverse experience that you need to try and overcome. As I said, I don't want to belittle the experience and try and tell you that it's easy or that I could always just do it and it's something that came natural to me. Not the case. It was a lot of painful trial and error and a lot of, as I said, repetitions of failure, repetitions of rejection was what allowed me to grow into the person and player that I am and how I then cope with those rejections and failure today. So the biggest thing is don't fear failure, but don't let failure and don't let rejection consume you. Attack it as best you can and approach it with the ferocity that is required. But in that same sense, when you're experiencing it, allow yourself to feel it, but don't allow yourself to become consumed by it and allow it to take over and affect the way that you go about who you are as a player, because you're in control. You're in control of your destiny. You're in control of who you are as a player. And as I said, it's as corny and cliche as it is, you are the author of your own story and who you are as a player, and you get to determine who you are as a player because you determine how much work you put in. You determine the choices and the decisions that you make and the risks that you are willing to take to try and get to where you want to be in terms of your playing career. So thank you guys so much. This was a fun one for me. I'm glad I was able to talk about some of these points with you guys, and I'm excited about this because I hope that this can help a player or two out there, and it will be interesting for somebody. So thank you so much for tuning in so far to episode 8. It's been a good one, and once again, just the drill. If you can like, comment, follow, subscribe, share, the whole shebang. Let some people know about what I'm trying to do over here, and once again, I appreciate you and your support so far. And I have some cool ideas for what's coming. Maybe some guests on the show soon, some other players, some other people in the footballing world. So please stay tuned to the upcoming episodes, and I will see you guys all very soon. Thanks so much. Peace.